Hey travelers, in this episode we explore a topic that has sparked debate and curiosity for over 2 decades, the events of September 11th. Our guest is a leading voice in the movement seeking a new investigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings with a background in architecture and engineering. They bring a wealth of knowledge and compelling evidence that challenges the official narrative. We'll discuss the theory of controlled demolition, examine the structural anomalies, and question the information provided by the mainstream media and government agencies. Get ready for a conversation that will leave you questioning what you thought you knew, like we have never had before on this podcast. Please welcome San Francisco Bay Area architect Richard Gage, AIA, member of the American Institute of Architects and founder and former CEO of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. He now leads the charge for a new World Trade Center investigation along with his courageous wife Gail at Richard Gage, 911.org. Mr. Gage became interested in researching the destruction of the World Trade Center high-rises after hearing the startling conclusions of a reluctant 9/11 researcher by the name of David Ray Griffin on the radio in 2006, which launched his own unyielding quest for the truth about 9/11. The organization he founded, AE 9/11 Truth, now numbers more than 3,600 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation into the explosive destruction of all 3 World Trade Center high-rise buildings on 9/11. As an architect, he has worked on most types of building construction, including numerous fireproof steel-framed buildings. Most recently, he worked on the construction documents for a $400 million mixed-use urban project with 1.2 million square feet of retail, parking structure, and a mid-rise office space. Altogether, about 1,200 tons of steel framing. Please welcome Richard Gage, AIA, architect. Welcome back to Infinite Rabbit Hole.
Imagine that this line represents the time, present 1985, future, past. Prior to this point in time, somewhere in the past, the timeline skewed into this tangent, creating an alternate 1985. Alternate you, me, and Einstein. Look, reality for everyone else.
Richard, welcome to the Infinite Rabbit Hole. How are you doing today?
Oh, fantastic. Thanks so much. That's Jeremy, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I gotta get you. Yeah. Doing fantastic. We're making some progress in the 9/11 Truth movement, and I'm excited to share that with your audience today.
Well, I'm excited for you to share that with our audience. This is a topic. I mean, we've discussed it, right? We've discussed it. I'm give you a little bit of background on myself. I am a 8-year Navy vet who worked in aviation the entire time. So I'm very familiar with JP5. Also, I can tell you a bit of the difference between JP5 and Jet A and Jet A1, which is the fuels that we're going to be talking about today. So I should be able to stay up with you a little bit. And then Jeff here, he's the conspiracy guy. So he's actually going to probably drool all over this presentation. He's going to love it.
Yep, I'm the resident crazy guy, so I'm here for it.
Yay. We need one.
You got to have one in every group, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Richard, can I just start off with a basic question for you?
Yeah, please.
Anybody who's watching right now, I know we're going to get a lot of people on Spotify who aren't watching the video. You're going to listen to the audio, but Richard here has a presentation that he's going to present for us today. I highly recommend that if you get a chance to watch this on either Spotify video, YouTube, or any of our other video platforms, that way you can see Richard's entire presentation. Richard, how did you find yourself interested in the subject of 9/11 and the kind of, let's say, mixed information or misinformation that we are getting?
Well, I bought the official narrative hook, line, and sinker for 5 years. So, I mean, I never heard any alternative explanation until in 2006. I heard Bonnie Faulkner's Guns and Butter program on KPFA. And she was interviewing David Ray Griffin, who's now written 14 books on the subject of 9/11. And I was just floored coming back from a construction observation meeting and in Lafayette, California. I was hearing that the ends of the beams were dripping with molten iron. I was hearing that there was a third tower that came down on 9/11. I'm going, what are you talking about? I know, I'm an architect. If there was a third tower that came down, these beams were expelled laterally at 80 miles an hour out of the Twin Towers. And the ends of the beams dripping with molten metal. This is crazy. I had to find out if it were true, so I went the next day, and David Ray Griffin was speaking at the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, and I had to find out what this is all about. And, man, the place was packed. There was like 600 people in this theater, and I'm going, whoa, this is enormous. Is there really something to this, or are all these people conspiracy theorists? So they wouldn't even let me in. I had to go home and watch on the internet because it was packed. So I learned how to, watch a live stream, and I was hooked. I had to tell you, but I was very uncomfortable. I felt like my world was turning around as I researched this over the next several weeks, as I met the local group, the Northern California 9/11 Truth Alliance. And they helped me to understand what was going on. They met every other week, and put the PowerPoint together, took it to the firm that I worked with, 15 architects and engineers. And they were, most of them thought I was nuts until I bought them pizza and made them come in and watch because they couldn't turn down a free pizza. So they all 14 others, including in addition to myself, they were all raised their hands at the end of this presentation. Oh my God, you're right. These are controlled demolitions. We got to have a new investigation. So those are my first, including myself, 15 architects and engineers signed on to the petition demanding a new investigation. Now there's 3,600 architects and engineers staking their reputations publicly on the petition at ae911truth.org. And so that's an extraordinary number of people that do not have no stake in this game, other than the fact that we're architects and these are buildings. So it's very impressive.
Jeff, you got anything, bud?
No, I mean, makes sense to me, right? Like, as the conspiracy guy here, it's kind of how a lot of this goes. Whatever you're talking about, whether it's 9/11 or take your pick of the thing, usually it just takes some time to sit down and really like look at or listen to some of the evidence or explanations on some of these things. And if people are willing to do that, not to say that you just automatically believe whatever the conspiracy is, but you're more inclined to be like, oh, wait a minute, there's something here for sure. So I think that's something to take away from that. You sat down and took the time, and something clicked, and you're like, okay, there's something here. So yeah, people should do that.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's great when you have somebody with some expertise in this in the fields that we're talking about. I feel like too often people are just very accepting of the information that comes to them, whether it be by the mainstream media, by, other government outlets. It doesn't necessarily click to a lot of people. Some of the most common sense details that are incorrect. This has been on my radar for a very long time. And it's probably before I met Jeff, I wasn't much of a conspiracy guy, but even the 9/11 story, the one that is represented or presented to the public, just never really clicked. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, especially after my time in the Navy. Just too many pieces didn't fit. It didn't make sense. Kind of taking the long route there, but I'm happy to have you here very much, Richard. This is going to be very insightful, and I know we'll have a great conversation here. Jeff, do you have anything before we start?
No, I'm excited to see the presentation. I'm relatively familiar with a lot of the, engineers and architects for 9/11 Truth stuff. I've seen all the documentaries like everybody else out here and that kind of thing. So, I'm stoked to see what you got and get into it.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go for it then. I just want to warn your audience, those who are new to this material, it has an effect on you. I don't know about Jeremy and Jeff, probably a long time ago, like me. At some point, this was shocking for me. The first couple of weeks turned my world upside down. I mean, I did not want to believe this. I was a flag-waving Reagan Republican who wanted to go into Afghanistan and Iraq and get those bastards who did this to us. Right? This is not something that just fell into place for me. I got real angry too. I'd been lied to at a colossal scale, and along with the rest of the world. And it felt like this weight on my shoulders. I had to do something about this. I mean, I'm an architect. These are buildings. The buck stops here. So it's not even the evidence that we're showing today of explosive controlled demolition, which is clear, convincing, overwhelming, abundant, and irrefutable. It's the implications of this evidence. What does this mean for us? Our entire government, our media, who led the drum up to the March for War. We're involved in a $6.5 trillion global war on terror following 9/11. The ramifications are extensive, and we'll talk more about those, but you can't trust what is told to us on the TV anymore. I did at one time. And you can't trust our government officials. And as you have indicated, Jeff, the lies have continued before and since 9/11. I'm more aware of the since ones with COVID and with the Charlie Kirk situation, the Gaza scam that we've been fed, which we're not going to talk about today, but we have lectures on those parallels between 9/11 and COVID, 9/11 and Gaza, which we can go into another time. But regarding 9/11, it's big enough for one night. And this is the largest building in most of our states, and yet most architects and engineers know nothing about it. I mean, the third worst structural failure in modern history, and I'm one of 90,000 members of the American Institute of Architects. We didn't get one bulletin on this. Again, the third worst structural failure in modern history. It wasn't hit by a plane, this building here, and it nevertheless went down at 5:20 in the afternoon. It was about a football field in length north of the North Tower. And here it is standing just fine, even as the towers are coming down. Some of the beams hit Building 7, actually. There was some damage, and that damage is documented by NIST. And but they say it's not a significant factor in the building's collapse. And so NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these collapses to the American people. Well, let's look at that collapse. Here is Building 7 at 5:20 in the afternoon, and the east penthouse on the left comes down first in an isolated event, and then 6 seconds later, the entire building does this. Whoa. Well, wait a second. We've seen this before, right? Like the old hotels in Las Vegas. We've got a frame of reference for this, unlike the Twin Towers, which was very different, which we'll get into. So we have to ask ourselves, well, what was the official narrative? Well, here it is from John Gross of the NIST report.
What we found was that uncontrolled building fires caused an extraordinary event. The collapse of World Trade Center 7 was primarily due to fire.
Fires. Well, we have to look at those fires, and these are the worst fires that we have any photographic or video evidence of in the building. And they are few, they're small, and they're scattered throughout the building. And furthermore, they're burned out on the floors of interest to NIST about an hour before the building came down. And that's important because they have a whole theory of how this building came down, and it relies on fires burning at the time of the collapse. It's called thermal expansion of these long span beams on floor 12 and floor which pushed this girder off of its seat on this column 79. And then they say floor 13 fell on 12, 12 and 11, and so on for 9 floors. And then this instability traveled eastward to the right all the way across this football field length building. Well, that's an extraordinary set of claims for which they had to omit key structural elements from their computer modeling in order to get it to work, which we go into when we have more time. This is a 4-hour presentation we're talking about today that we're giving in an hour. So what have we ever lost a high-rise building, which are all fire protected Type 1 fire-resistant buildings, steel framed, most all of them? No, not one. None of these steel frame fire-protected structures have ever come down due to fire, not before or after 9/11. And these, particularly in these fully engulfed structures, with fire, they still don't bring them down. Well, what can bring a high-rise down? Well, we can look at controlled demolition as a hypothesis, one that NIST never considered seriously. On the left, series of known controlled demolitions. On the right, Building 7. Do you see any resemblance? Is there enough similarity?
It's spot on.
To warrant an investigation into the possible use of explosives, especially since fire, the official cause of this building's collapse, has never in history brought down a steel frame, fire-protected structure, ever. Well, so we're going to look at a few features of controlled demolition, see if it has any of them. Beginning with feature number 1, is there a sudden onset of destruction? Well, here's Dan Rather narrating his view that evening of this building's collapse for us.
What you're seeing are high shots. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word.
Oops.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire an energy vampire. But also they're a literal vampire. And suddenly my team is spending all their time sharpening wooden stakes and buying bulk silver and rehearsing ancient chants, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant takes insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a short list of the best fits for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Año nuevo, los mismos Extra Value Meals en McDonald's. Ahora te puedes llevar 2 snack wraps y papitas y una bebida mediana por solo $8. Solo por tiempo limitado. Precios y participación pueden variar. Los precios pueden ser más altos en Hawaii, Alaska y California y con entrega.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
But was that, Dan, deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down? Well, that's Dan using his intuition, right? We all should, in fact, use our intuition. And the problem is he's never repeated these words before 9/11 after 9/11. And we never seen, with 2 exceptions, this building coming down on mainstream television. This should have been the most studied structural failure ever in all the structural engineering schools and architecture schools. It's a completely unprecedented event and the largest ever. So, but it's been swept under the rug by the American Institute of Architects, by the American Society of Civil Engineers. So let's look and see if it has feature number 2. Is there a straight down symmetrical collapse into the building's footprint? Let's look from West Street. Yeah, pretty straight down, pretty symmetrical. How do you achieve that? Well, there's only one way. Those columns which are holding up that building have to be removed. And all of the core columns have to be removed at once, within a fraction of a second of each other, followed by the perimeter columns about a second later. But they all have to come down at once too. And then you have to repeat that on every floor. Any deviation of that pattern, you have problems. Can these fires cause that level of precision? It's just not going to happen. No. And if you get problems, if you have some of those explosives don't go off, you can have problems like this. And you can have problems like this. Somebody has to go back into that building and set off those explosives. It's got to be perfect. This is a science. If a building is damaged, besides on one side, it would tip over to that side. NIST says this damage was due to thermal expansion on the northeast corner of the building. Well, it should have fallen that way, not straight down. No. And how fast did it fall? Well, physicists have analyzed the building and discovered that it came down at free fall acceleration for at least a third of its 7-second fall.
Wow.
Well, wait a minute. What does that mean? That's as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky, gaining velocity every second, the definition of acceleration. Mm-hmm. And what's it accelerating through? 40,000 tons of structural steel. That's 3 to 5 times stronger than it needed to be to hold that building up. NIST was denying that it came down to free fall, acknowledging this steel, saying that would mean there'd be no structure under it. But members of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, Stephen Jones and David Chandler in particular, challenged NIST publicly in their press conference, and they had to admit and acknowledge that it came down, you're right, at free fall after denying it for 8 years. So 7 years. So we have finally the admission of the free fall, but no acknowledgement of what happened to all those columns. So it could come down at free fall. Are these fires going to take out all those columns at once? No, that's not going to happen, is it? So we'll look at the next feature of controlled demolition, the total dismemberment of the steel frame. I mean, we had a moment-resisting steel frame structure where the columns and beams are rigidly welded one to another. They don't just fail, these connections, naturally. The failure, if there's going to occur, it'll be a bending moment outside the connections. But what we have is a house of cards, literally. It looks like it comes down as, and the columns and beams are severed one from another in a 4 to 6 story pile. So buildings that fall naturally, they fall over to the path of least resistance. The building is certainly damaged. It's recognizable, though, as a building. It doesn't fall like a house of cards. The columns and beams are not severed one from another, because that's, again, the strongest connection. Can these fires take out all those column to beams connections? No, not going to happen. Do we have sounds of explosions then? Because what could bring this building down like we saw? Well, explosions could, and explosives, but you'd have witnesses that would hear the sounds of explosions. They would see the flashes of light. Let's see what we have here. NIST says there are no witnesses of explosions at this building. They claimed to have interviewed over 100 witnesses. Well, they missed all of these, apparently. Here's Daryl, a medical student, interviewed that evening.
We were watching the building, actually, because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was, it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and it was horrifying. And then, about a second later, the bottom floor caved out, and
about a second later, the floor caved out after a sound of a clap of thunder, a shock wave ripping through the building, windows busting out. We have Kevin McPadden, former Air Force medic, who is doing triage in the building. But this is his experience after being told that the building had structural damage and you better get away. But this is what he hears before the building came down.
You heard explosions, like boom. It's like a distinct sound. It's not like when the compression, like boom, 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 like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something. That, to me, I knew that was an explosion. There was no doubt in my mind.
And what did this gentleman, Bill Rosati, see?
I was standing like 2 blocks away, and all of a sudden I just seen a big flash, and then I seen the building coming down, and I just seen people just running everywhere, chaotic like.
Okay, a big flash. And how about Richard Patterson, the captain of the FDNY?
1-7 let go as well, and was a series of concussive explosions.
And this first responder, Patrick Dillon.
I remember feeling that like it was like freight trains underneath the earth, shaking the earth, even shaking me. That's when we all saw Building 7 crumple in the middle, like way up at the top. It buckled and then dropped.
And this gentleman, Richard Rotan's deputy director of New York's Office of Emergency Management, he had to go into the building.
Then he had to go into that building to assess it.
You could hear the building creak above us. You could hear things fall. You could hear the fire burning. You could see columns just hanging from the upper floors, gaping holes in the floors up above us. There was an elevator car that was blown out of its shaft and it was down the hall.
Wait a minute. An elevator car blown out of the shaft, this shaft right here. Oops. Let's find that shaft there. Blown out, one of these elevator cars blown out of the shaft in the hall, which runs right next to the core here, 30 feet away. That's an incredible explosion that could accomplish that. What could cause that? What could cause the experience here by Barry Jennings, who, along with Mayor Giuliani's attorney, Michael Hess, had been called to a meeting, but they got there late. In fact, after both planes hit the towers, but before they came down, everybody had evacuated the Building 7. These guys didn't know that. They got up to the 23rd floor, and this is their experience on the way down.
When we got to the 8th floor, I started walking to one side of the building. That side of the building was gone. The first explosion I heard when I was on the stairwell landing, when we made it down to the 6th floor. Then we made it back to the 8th floor. I heard some more explosions.
What's the sound?
Like a boom. Like an explosion.
More than one?
Yes. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor. When we get outside, a police officer comes to me and says, you have to run. We have more information of bombs, so you have to run.
Information of bombs? Bombs like this heard in the late morning of 9/11 in the vicinity of Building 7?
Yeah, here's one of the guys who can tell you I'm okay, all right? Here, hold on. You want to call your mother or something? All right. Don't worry about me. You need to make calls right now. All right, let's go.
So, NIST says there are no witnesses of explosions. Well, that video is a witness of explosions in the late morning of 9/11 in the vicinity of Building 7. Well, if you had explosions and explosive demolition, you'd have people that knew about it in advance. There'd be foreknowledge, like Chief Nick Viscani, who says, we're moving the command post over this way. That building's coming down. Huh? He knows the building's coming down. We've never lost a steel frame, fire-protected structure due to office fires alone. Well, listen to Chief Pete Hayden.
Well, we had our special operations people set up surveying instruments to monitor and see if there was any movement of the building. We're concerned of the possibility of collapse of the building. And we had a discussion with one particular engineer there, and we asked him if we allowed it to burn, could we anticipate a collapse, and if so, how soon? And it turned out that he was pretty much right on the money, that he said in its current state you have about 5 hours.
Wait a minute. You have about 5 hours in its current state? Again, we've never lost a steel frame fire protected structure. And this engineer is not only saying the building's going to come down, but he's saying it's going to come down in about 5 hours. Well, and it does. It come down in exactly 5 hours at 5:20 p.m. that evening, 5:23 to be exact. Of course, the prediction could only have been made with foreknowledge, and they won't release the name of this engineer who made this startling, unprecedented, genius prediction. Well, listen to these mysterious construction workers walking away from Building 7, hearing an explosion over their shoulder, looking back at the building, and then looking straight into the CNN camera and saying this.
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down. The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
All right, guys.
We are walking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame. Debris coming down.
What? The building is about to blow up? Flame and debris coming down? How do they know the building is about to blow up? We've never lost a steel frame fire protected structure in history. Incredible. And so what does Patrick Dillon also suggest to us?
And he pointed to what turned out to be the entrance to Building 7's lobby. He said, go in there, take a break. There's other guys in there, like that. And that's what I did. I finished coming down off the pile and climbed over the wreckage of Vesey, and went in those revolving doors and just kind of fell on the floor. There were other guys in there doing the same thing I was, just shaking their heads and spitting out poison and trying to get their lungs back together again, as I was. And I was on the floor. These battalion chiefs come in through the revolving doors. There was 3 of them. They had the white helmets. I didn't get any IDs off them. But as soon as they stepped inside, what stepped in behind them were these 2 people in black with black ski masks on and Uzis. And the Uzis were, hanging off their necks. And I don't know what they were or who they were, but the battalion chiefs started yelling at us, right? Ordering us to get out of this building. They're going to pull the building. Everybody out now. And they ordered us back out.
So guys in Uzis, that's interesting to say the least. But they're going to pull the building, get out. Again, this building had a few fires that afternoon. They shouldn't even have been in there in the first place, but now they're told it's going to come down. And this is corroborated by Captain Richard Patterson of the New York Fire Department.
So he and I made our way over to the entrance of the building. Before we arrived there was a construction worker who happened to be, he emerged from the dust cloud and walked past the chief and I. And he said he had overheard the chief's comment, and he paused and said, that'll be coming down around 5 o'clock. We part ways, we arrive at 7, and there were 2 paramilitarily clad men with black rifles, sunglasses. And as we approached the entrance, they closed ranks and said, one of them said, this building has been secured, which is odd because in my experience in the FDNY, anybody preventing access to the fire department in the event of a fire, that's a criminal act. The chief and I were not in a position to argue the point, given the inequality in weaponry present.
Again, guys in military garb keeping firefighters from entering the building. This is extraordinary. And the example of foreknowledge, being told that this was going to be coming down at 5 o'clock. Again, really quite extraordinary. How about Kevin McPadden? He was a witness of those explosions, but before he heard and saw those explosions, he was held back several blocks away from Building 7 with others, because they were told it was going to come down. So they're moving everybody away. And this is what he heard from a radio held in the hands of who he believed to be a Red Cross worker.
At the last few seconds, he took his hand off, and you heard 3, 2, 1.
Wait a minute. Do fires bring buildings down to countdowns? What's really going on here? This is, again, rather extraordinary, what we're learning. And the BBC announced the collapse of this building 20 minutes before it even happened. Take a look.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy.
Sketchy indeed. They apologize for this grievous error, citing the confusing events of the day. What, does this make them psychic? What's really going on here? Well, CNN is not to be outdone. They announced the collapse at 11:07 that morning.
In New York, Alan Dodd-Frank joins us on the phone in Lower Manhattan. Alan?
Aaron, just 2 or 3 minutes ago, there was yet another collapse or explosion. I'm now out of sight. A Good Samaritan has taken me in on Duane Street. But at 11:15, there was another collapse or explosion following the 10:30 collapse of the second tower. And a firefighter who rushed by us estimated that 50 stories went down. The street filled with smoke. It was like a forest fire roaring down a canyon. Now, as I think Patty Sabga and others have told you, all of Manhattan is covered, downtown Manhattan is covered with thick.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
50 stories went down. There was no other 50-story building that went down. There was no other building that went down. There were buildings that were badly damaged. But they're talking about building 7 here, 47 stories. So how did they, where did this story come from so early in late morning compared to late afternoon? Had that building come down at that time, we wouldn't have any photos or videos of it. It would have been completely obscured by the massive dust cloud released when the Twin Towers went down. Maybe that was supposed to happen. It was targeted for destruction at that time. So there wouldn't be all of these photos and videos of the free falling of Building 7. And maybe those mysterious construction workers walking away from Building 7, hearing that explosion and telling us it's going to blow up. Maybe they had fixed a dud that didn't go off at this time in the morning. And that's how they knew it was going to go off later. And others did too. Interesting. Well, do we have experts that agree about this? Here's one of the top European controlled demolition guys.
Danny Jowenko is the expert on this in Europe. What did he say?
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten. Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Het heeft een team gedaan van experts.
Team of experts did this. Professional work, without a doubt. Speaking of professionals, there's 36 structural engineers among the 3,600 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation. Like Kamal Obaid, a localized failure, he says, in a steel frame building like World Trade Center 7 cannot cause a catastrophic collapse like a house of cards without a simultaneous and patterned loss of several of its columns at key locations within the building. Does that sound like something that fire is going to do? Kamal is the CEO of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. And he is joined by Professor Leroy Hulsey, who engaged in a 4-year study of the collapse of this building, because he said, we got to figure out what happened to this building. This is completely unprecedented. There's hundreds of similarly designed buildings around the world. We got to find out. Well, the University of Alaska sponsored him as the chair of the civil engineering department to find out what's going on here. He's one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country, after all. So he proceeded to get his PhD candidate students to compete with one another. One using one program, very sophisticated program, SAP 2000, and Abacus, the other program, and they corroborated each other's results. And they found that if this building was going to fall because of the failure of column 79, as NIST claimed, it would fall over. Intuitive, right? To the path of least resistance, to the east, where column 79 is in the northeast corner. And so he found that, if in order to get it to fail like we see in the video in the center, we have to remove all the columns in the building at once. And then the University of Alaska on the left looks exactly like the video in the center. Compare that to NIST's computer model, where they try to get it to fall, failing 400 structural steel connections every second in order to try to get it to fall, without telling us they're doing that, by the way. But they can't even get it to fall, and it begins to tip over. In fact, so they stop it 2 seconds in to the overall collapse. So their own computer model disproves their theories. What did the University of Alaska find? Fire did not cause the collapse of this building. The temperatures were not high enough to cause a weakening of the steel framing. Thermal expansion did not result in a loss of support for the beams and the girders. This building was a global failure involving what? The near simultaneous failure of all the columns in the building. Not a progressive collapse as claimed by NIST. Well, how do you do that? There's only one way, and that's controlled demolition, and for which we would need, in this case, in Building 7, incendiaries used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. Do we have evidence of this? Oh, yeah. Provided by who? FEMA, in their Appendix C, among others, in their Building Performance Assessment Team report of May of 2002. They have a metallurgical examination of the steel. What did they find? Never before observed eutectic reactions involving intergranular melting, capable of turning a solid steel girder into Swiss cheese, like we see in this piece of World Trade Center 7 steel, with silver dollar size holes. Fire doesn't do this to steel. Doesn't do this either in this piece of World Trade Center Twin Towers beam, thinned to razor sharpness, they say. A rapid oxidation and sulfidation. Liquid iron, that's molten iron. That's 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Office fires are not even half this temperature typically. Sulfur formed during this hot corrosion attack on the steel. Where did the sulfur come from?
Thermite.
This speculates maybe it came from the gypsum board. No. Gypsum board has been used for 100 years to protect steel from fires. It's never turned around and attacked the steel that has been designed to protect. Now, this metallurgical examination results is termed the deepest mystery uncovered in the investigation. Yet it's completely ignored by NIST, but the New York Times calls it that. And in fact, the author of the FEMA report, Dr. Jonathan Barnett, says steel members in the debris pile appear to have been partly evaporated in extraordinarily high temperatures. Well, what does it take to evaporate steel? 4,000 degrees. Where are these temperatures coming from? Nothing in the official narrative can explain any of these temperatures, and there's so much more, including the evaporation of the beams documented here by Abulhassan Astani Azal, a structural engineer who supports the official narrative. We have liquid molten steel or iron pouring out of the material held in the crab claw excavator, and we can tell the temperature of molten steel or iron by its color. That's just the physics of the luminescence of the steel. We're exceeding 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit here. What in the official narrative can accomplish this? Office fires are only half these temperatures. Jet fuel burns at less than that, 600 degrees according to this engineering firm and this trading resource firm that says 600 degrees in open air. Fires may get a little hotter than that. In the worst case, mathematical models for experimentation in fires, 1,830 degrees, absolute worst case. We're twice these temperatures. What can get at twice those temperatures? Can thermite do that? Well, what is thermite anyway?
An incendiary used by the military, thermite is a compound of iron oxide and aluminum, which when ignited sustains an extreme heat reaction, creating molten iron. In just 2 seconds, thermite can reach temperatures over 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, quite enough to liquefy steel. We know that open-air fires cannot burn hot enough to melt steel, but metal had melted at the base of the towers. Appendix C of the FEMA report describes sulfur residues on the World Trade Center steel. The New York Times called this the deepest mystery of all. Sulfur slightly lowers the melting point of iron, and iron oxide and iron sulfide had formed on the surface of the structural steel. Sulfur used with thermite is called thermate, producing even faster results.
Well, maybe we're getting somewhere here, because if thermite were used, it would explain the presence of extreme temperatures, 4,000 and 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It would explain the presence of iron, molten iron, elemental iron. We haven't used iron in our skyscrapers for 100 years. Where is all this melted iron coming from? Fe. It would explain the presence of sulfur too. Sulfur is added to thermite to become thermate, where it's much more effective at cutting through steel. So we have to ask ourselves, this is all evidence of ignited thermite. Is it? Yes, it can only be that. Is there any other evidence of ignited thermite? Yeah. Who's providing this? The U.S. Geological Survey. In their particle atlas of the World Trade Center dust in 2005, it's published. What do they find? Billions of what? Previously molten, meaning 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, iron, meaning the byproduct of thermite, microspheres. How do they get to be spherical? They're about the size of a human hair on average. Visible. They are visible to the naked eye. Well, aerosolized liquids form themselves into spheres by surface tension. That's just what they do, and especially under explosive pressure. So this all makes sense. Used in the EPA says these are used as a signature component to distinguish World Trade Center dust from common office building dust. In other words, it's not even World Trade Center dust unless it has these previously molten iron microspheres in it. We don't know where they came from, but they got to have it. RJ Lee Group doesn't know where they came from either, but they say they comprise up to 6% of some of these samples, dust samples. By extrapolation, we're talking about up to 4 tons of the evidence of thermite here with no other rational explanation. R.J. Lee says these are formed during the World Trade Center event, not before by the welders putting the building together, not afterward by the iron workers taking the building apart, but during the event. Well, how would they get formed? We could do an experiment. Experiment is the arbiter of competing hypotheses. Let's light some thermite, see what happens. We see what looks like thousands of sparks, but we can wait till they fall in the pan as previously molten iron microspheres. Well, that's pretty clear what's happening here. Thermite creates molten iron microspheres. Molten iron microspheres are found in all the World Trade Center dust. That was all evidence of ignited thermite and can only be that. Is there any evidence of unignited thermite in the World Trade Center dust? Yeah. A team of 8 international scientists led by Niels Harrod and Stephen Jones, nuclear physicist and chemistry professor, and they analyzed 7 independently collected samples that are sent to them, and they find these curious red-gray chips. They thought they were paint, but unlike paint, they're attracted strongly by a magnet.
Huh.
And so they get real curious. What's all this iron doing? Primer paint has iron in it, but it's not strongly attracted to a magnet like this. So they analyze the red layer, and they do X-ray energy dispersive spectroscopy in this top layer. And they find that it has peaks of aluminum and iron. Come on. Anyway, aluminum and iron and manganese, which is added again to thermite to become thermate. What's the signature of thermite doing in these paint chips? That's not right. It shouldn't be there. So they do, they zoom in 50,000 times with an electron microscope, and they find what? They find iron oxide crystals and aluminum platelets that are 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair. Nanosize. We're at the nanoscale here. They're set in a matrix, a bed of oxygen, silica, carbon. This is organic material. Organic material is what's added to TNT, high energy explosives, to expand rapidly as a gas and knock things over. That's how explosives work. Whereas incendiaries work by means of extreme heat and burn things up. Here it looks like we have a mixture of both. So they get real curious. They do a peer-reviewed literature research, and they find this has been made already before. It's called superthermite. Lawrence Livermore Lab developed it before 2001. Explosive composites based on thermite reactions whose fuel and oxidizer constituents are intimately mixed on the nanometer size scale. Well, this is interesting. They found that when they reduce these particles to the nanometer size scale, the surface volume increases exponentially, and you have an instantaneous chemical reaction. So you've engineered an incendiary, which works by means of heat, massive heat, to become more explosive. So Lawrence Livermore Lab, when they ignite their chips, they found that they produce these peaks of energy. This is aluminothermic reaction, and producing this behavior. Well, An exothermic reaction is also produced by the red-gray chips that they found from the World Trade Center at about 425 degrees Celsius, 850 Fahrenheit. Well, this is fascinating. They're doing the same thing as the peer-reviewed aluminothermic materials. Not only that, what do you imagine that they produce when they're ignited? Molten iron microspheres with the same signature, chemical signature, as the molten iron microspheres found and produced by R.J. Lee and the U.S. Geological Survey in all the World Trade Center dust. So we know exactly where those previously molten iron microspheres came from. They came from these red-gray chips, as if we didn't know. They're found attached to partially ignited red-gray chips in the World Trade Center dust, as you see here and here. You see, this is a very advanced material. It's not made in a cave in Afghanistan. It's made only in the most advanced defense contracting laboratories. And they conclude in this 25-page peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal that the red layer is active, unreacted thermitic material incorporating nanotechnology. It's a highly energetic pyrotechnic or explosive material. This has all been documented since 2009. Nobody else has submitted their peer-reviewed paper documenting or trying to challenge officially these results. They'll wave their hands. Oh, this is just paint. Well, paint doesn't have these exotic properties. It's clearly not paint. So this is a set of evidence that has all of the 10 key characteristic features and some very uncharacteristic features of controlled demolition, explosive destruction with incendiaries in the case of Building 7. None of these features can be accomplished by fire. The official.
What if an appliance emergency didn't have to be? If your appliances suddenly decided they were done, don't stress. Best Buy has you covered with a wide variety of major appliances from trusted brands, in stock and available now. So you don't have to worry about laundry piling up, refilling the fridge, or that big dinner party you're hosting. Because Best Buy has the knowledge and expertise to get you the right appliance for your home. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. A six-pack of abs? Nope. Six-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Your Wish is Your Command is being called the greatest success book of all time, with over 100,000 five-star reviews.
I went from 5K on my bank account to 8 million.
My income doubled.
I was able to retire at the age of 31.
It reveals the missing key to the law of attraction. Your Wish is Your Command is now available on Amazon. Search Your Wish is Your Command on Amazon to get your copy today.
This is your fix.
I'm your host, Stassi Schroeder. Welcome to Tell Me Lies, the official podcast. What's the most unhinged thing of season 3?
Steven, because he's so evil.
I do think he is misunderstood.
You see everyone face consequences. It's intoxicating.
The writers just know how to trick you.
There's always a twist in this show.
Tell Me Lies, the official podcast, January 6th, and stream the new season of Tell Me Lies, January 13th on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
Cause of this building's collapse, let alone all of them, with additional circumstantial evidence and corroborative eyewitness testimony. This is proof of controlled demolition, a body of proof that's convinced 3,600 architects and engineers to sign on to the petition demanding a new investigation. And many of them appear in our ongoing film series, 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom, in which Mick Harrison of the the litigation director for the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, and myself are in the boardroom giving and providing all of this evidence, along with our experts, to the grand jury. Here's just a taste of that film series.
No matter how improbable the conclusion may appear, when you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
We're bringing alive in the film the 60 exhibits of the 9/11 WTC evidence contained in the Lawyers Committee grand jury petition that have already been submitted to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan to present to a special criminal jury.
This historic investigation is ongoing, and there's a role for you in it. Yes, you can help us bring the real perpetrators to justice.
Through this film series, we're bringing together 24 experts in their fields.
They ignored any scenario involving incendiaries.
Demolition work, you're going to set charges on each floor.
The building could not have been brought down by office fires.
In other words, all of the interior columns over 8 stories came down, were basically lost at once.
I could make out what looked like from a science fiction movie, molten lava, okay?
And he paused and said, that'll be coming down around 5 o'clock.
We'll be filming these evidence presentations, not only for our filings with the grand jury, but also presentations to each of you. We're inviting you to serve as virtual grand juror during each episode.
And yes, we've created 4 of these episodes already, and you can see them at our website, richardgage911.org or 911c2c.org, the website for the film series. And you can also help co-produce the film series. You'll be an executive producer with a $500 donation and listed in the credits as such. And in fact, you, for a donation of $10, you'll live forever in our hearts also. So yes, take part in that if you can. At least watch the series. It's free. And we have to ask ourselves, what about the Twin Towers? Oh my God. If Building 7 was a controlled demolition, and I believe we've just proved that it was, is it possible that the same site, the World Trade Center site, the Twin Towers could exhibit some of the same alarming evidence? Well, it's even more alarming. After all, look at it. We have upward, outward, arching streamers, a geometry of fireworks, freely flying structural steel sections weighing 4 and 8 tons each, laterally ejected at 80 miles an hour, clocked by physicists, trailing thick white smoke clouds, landing up to 600 feet in every direction. Why are they trailing thick white smoke clouds? Steel is not flammable in office fire or jet fuel conditions. What's going on here that every one of these structural steel sections is trailing smoke? Well, let's look again at thermite and how it burns and what it creates in addition to molten iron. Thick white smoke clouds of aluminum oxide ash, the other byproduct of thermite, in addition to molten iron. So now we know. Well, let's look at the evidence. Do we have the features of controlled demolition? Let's take them one at a time. Is there a sudden onset of destruction? Yeah. The North Tower is standing at rest, and all of a sudden, it's in uniform downward motion. No jolt, no hesitation upon impact of the cold, hard steel below. Same with the South Tower. It's standing at rest, and all of a sudden, it's in uniform downward motion. No jolt, no hesitation upon impact with that steel below the point of plane impacts. We're told that the upper part drove the rest of the building down to the ground and then destroyed itself. This is called the crush down, crush up theory, produced by Zdeněk Bazan of Northwestern University in Chicago, who submitted this mathematically obscure paper just 2 days after 9/11. The rest of us are trying to get our bearings. We're in shock. Who did this to us? When's the next attack coming? And not this guy. Apparently he's in his den creating the key theoretical basis for NIST's column failure theory, which they use to this day. Incredible. But it suffers from some key problems, one of which is the violation of Newton's third law of motion. There's an equal and opposite destructive force when two bodies collide. Take a Mack truck, run it into a Volkswagen. Who wins, right? The Mack truck wins, not the Volkswagen. Does it matter if we drop the Volkswagen onto the Mack truck? No. The lightest part of a structure cannot destroy the cold, hard, heavier, intact steel below. Again, the lightest part is at the top with I-beams, wide flange beams that are only 3/4 inch thick, but they get bigger and thicker as you go down till mid-height. You're 52 inches by 22 inches. And then that infills and you're almost solid steel at the bottom. Well, let's take a look at that Volkswagen. Is it destroying the lower part? I'll make it easier for you. Watch the lower red line, the point of plane impacts. Is the upper part destroying the lower part, or is the upper section of this building being destroyed itself, telescoping in on itself in the first couple of seconds? That's what's happening. The Volkswagen is being destroyed. If it were destroying the lower part, you would see it after 3 seconds. But none of the photos, none of the videos show an upper part destroying the rest of the building down. You already saw it's been destroyed itself. If it were there, it would have destroyed these few remaining columns standing 900 feet in the air for about a dozen seconds until they also suffer an explosive charge below, and then that column descends frame by frame through the smoke that it is falling through. So let's take a look at this from another perspective. What are we looking at? Are we looking at a building collapsing, or are we looking at something that looks more like a volcanic eruption with upward, outward, arching streamers, a geometry of fireworks, freely flying structural steel sections? In this case, freely flying solid molten objects trailed by thick white smoke clouds. Yes, the analogy is much closer to a volcanic eruption. And yes, the volcanic eruption is on the right if you had any confusion there. But they very closely resemble each other. Plus, this is not what we're seeing at all. Crush down and then crush up theory, the pile driver theory. What we're seeing is that it's a 4-stage operation. First stage, like a controlled demolition, much like Building 7. Second stage, outward, driven, laterally ejected, freely flying structural steel sections. Third stage, remaining in the air for 900 feet and for a dozen seconds. Fourth stage, the falling core, 3 seconds. So let's ask ourselves the second feature. Is it true? Do we have patterned explosions and flashes of light? What could really bring this building down? Well, there's 156 first responders who are witnesses of explosions, many of them before the tower comes down. These professionals were recorded within a month after 9/11 by their Fire Commissioner Thomas von Essen, producing 12,000 pages of testimony, which hardly anybody read all of them. Professor Graham McQueen did. 156 of these 500 first responders were found to be eyewitnesses of explosions. Let's look at a few of them. We felt the ground shake. You could see the tower sway, and then it just came down. Wait a minute. They're seeing something, they're feeling something, they're hearing something, and then the building comes down. There's a very specific order of events that many of them refer to. All of a sudden, the ground just started shaking. Felt like a train running under my feet. The next thing we know, we look up and the tower is collapsing. Shook my bones. Shortly before the first tower came down, I remember feeling the ground shaking, heard a terrible noise, and then debris just started flying everywhere. I saw flash, flash, flash at the lower level of the building. You know, like when they demolish a building? With each popping sound, initially an orange, and then a red flash came out of the building. Then it would just go all around the building on both sides. Saw a number of brief light sources being emitted from inside the building between floors 10 and 15. He saw about 6 of these brief flashes, accompanied by a crackling sound before the tower collapsed. I saw low-level flashes. I saw flash, 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 and then it looked like the building came down. An explosion appeared at the very top. Simultaneously, from all 4 sides, material shot out horizontally, and then there seemed to be a momentary delay before you could see the beginning of the collapse. How specific does this fire chief need to be, this expert witness? NIST ignored all of these witnesses of explosions, saying that, once again, there are no explosions outside of the initial jet impact in the building. There was an explosion in the South Tower. One floor under another. When it hit about the 5th floor, I figured it was a bomb because it looked like a synchronized, deliberate kind of thing. Seemed like on television when they blow up these buildings. Seemed like it was going all the way around like a belt. All these explosions. The building was blowing out on all 4 sides. We actually heard the pops, you know? You heard the pops of the building. I thought the terrorists planted explosives somewhere in the building. That's how loud it was. A crackling explosive. Another loud boom at the upper floors. And then a series of smaller explosions which appeared to go completely around the building at the upper floors. And another loud earth-shattering blast with a large fireball that blew out more debris. The lower level of the building, you know, like when they demolish a building, that's what I thought I saw. Did you see any flashes? I said, yes. I thought it was just me. He said, no, I saw them too. Everybody, I think, at that point still thought these things were blown up. So I was fully expecting anything else to blow up. You were there when the planes hit? No, I was there when the building exploded. He said, you mean when it fell down? No, when it exploded. How about these gentlemen in this firehouse?
Floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was if they had detonated. They were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down.
NIST says there's no other witnesses. They claim to have interviewed 100 first responders, and they missed every one of these 186. How is that even possible? Or was it more of a cover-up? Do we have a straight down symmetrical progression? Well, the South Tower begins to tip over, like you imagine that it might. In fact, it's at 20 degrees. So we have asymmetrical loading on the structure below by this South Tower that's falling off. We have asymmetrical damage from the fires, asymmetrical damage from the impact of the planes. How in the world, then, do we get complete symmetrical progression of destruction, just like the firefighters described, all the way around each face of the building? It makes no sense. Well, maybe it does make sense if we look in and zoom in on the leading wave of these explosions, which can only be that, just like the firefighters described. floor by floor, popping out of the building. And they heard those pops. We're not looking at a nuclear weapon going off. We're looking at a series of what must be pre-placed explosives floor by floor here. We're not looking at directed energy weapons. They've never been tested at this scale for this purpose. Right? Floor by floor destruction. How do you time that? How do you create? Why not just use explosives? So we have to find out if we have squibs or isolated explosive ejections, which are occurring well below the zone of destruction, 20 stories below, 40 stories below the zone of destruction. No accounting for these isolated explosive ejections anywhere in the official narrative. 60 stories down below the zone of destruction. What is happening here? These are obviously mistimed explosions occurring with solids ejected from the core. And in the South Tower, on the left side, in this looped video, we see about a dozen such explosive ejections, essentially liquefying the structure, reducing its rigidity to nothing so that it doesn't continue its angular momentum and fall off the building to the right, reacting off the solid object below it. No, it just falls back down eventually into the building and then straight down also. And how fast? The North Tower is easily measurable by physics teachers, David Chandler in this case, and physicists. 64% of gravity it's falling at. That is 2/3 of free fall acceleration. That's almost as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky. The bowling ball had no resistance. This had only 10% of the resistance left from the structural steel columns. So 90% of the strength of the structural columns has been removed. Where we're talking about columns like this, 52 inches wide, 22 inches high. These columns, where did they go? We're talking about 287 massive columns, 47 in the core and 240 in the perimeter. There's more steel than glass on the exterior of these particular buildings. These structural steel sections, what happened to them? That they're being removed so that the building can fall that fast. Well, let's look at them in particular because they are laterally ejected, which we already saw some evidence of. And here we see they are impaled into the skyscrapers all around them. Landing as far away as 600 feet, destroying the Winter Gardens, destroying the Deutsche Bank building. These structural steel sections are composed of 3 vertical columns tied together by spandrel panels that this gentleman is on top of. There's only 4 bolts at the top and bottom of these at the point of plane impacts, tying them into the columns above and below. So all the plane had to do with its massive kinetic energy going 500 miles an hour is push in with 10,000 gallons of fuel, a lot of mass, a lot of speed, pushing in these orthogonal.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
If you're a landlord, you know managing rentals on pen and paper can be a major headache. That's why there's RentRedi. RentRedi is a smarter, simpler way to collect rent automatically, screen tenants, track expenses, and keep up with tenants all in one place, so you can make time for what matters most. Try RentRedi today, risk-free, starting at just $5 a month at rentredi.com. That's RENTREDI.com.
Structural column sections, shearing those bolts. It didn't slice those columns. It sheared those bolts, and they are freely flying. That's the plane, and this is now the collapse about an hour later or so. Freely flying structural steel sections weighing 4 and 8 tons, laterally eject. Look at this one. Ejected. This one's going to hit building 7. Wait, back, 2, forward, 2, back, 2. What are we seeing? We're seeing the lateral ejection. It's not, how does gravity work? Down. What's going on here? Out. And then gravity begins to take over till you get a 45-degree angle or so. And what is it trailing? Thick white smoke clouds of what? Aluminum oxide ash, the other byproduct of thermite. Well, there's enough energy here to hurl a 200-pound cannonball 3 miles. And there's a lot of cannonballs here, hundreds of them, hurled 600 feet at 80 miles an hour, well beyond the boundary of the World Trade Center, impacting, as you can see, on the north, World Trade Center 7 even. But NIST says that is not a significant factor in that building's collapse. There was some damage to the north, to the southwest corner here, but the collapse started in the northeast corner right here. So let's think this through. If 100,000 tons or so of steel framing is distributed, most all of it outside the footprint of the building, then what's left to crush the building? This is about 2/3 of the weight of this building. It's not available to crush the building and also be 600 feet away or 200 or whatever. Maybe it's the concrete. Let's look for the concrete, because we have 110 floors, each an acre in size, composed of sections like this. Concrete poured on metal decking supported by lightweight steel trusses. We're looking for about 110 acre-size assemblies. How many do we find? Not 50, not 20, not 10, not 1 acre-size floor, not a half acre, not a quarter acre, not a 1/16 of an acre size floor. In a real pancake and collapse like this one in Bangkok, Thailand, due to the recent Myanmar earthquake, we have pancakes. Compare the pancakes. We have 5 stories, maybe 6, maybe 7, of concrete floors. That's a real gravitational collapse, naturally caused. That's what we're looking for. In fact, we're looking for something that's 3 times the height of this, given that we have 110 floors in the Twin Towers. So we don't find that, though. We're missing the concrete. That's where it went. It's pulverized in midair. What can pulverize 90,000 tons of concrete floors in midair? Well, according to the American Society of Testing Materials, report C856, concrete is powderized at as low a temperature as 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. We have 4,000 and 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. What do you think it can do? If at 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit it turns to white powder, decomposed, hydration products, well, yeah, we've got a mechanism that can account for the decomposition of the concrete in this incredible heat. Not only ASTM C856, but a fire safety journal, which says 2,200 degrees, concrete is completely decomposed. We have twice these temperatures with nanothermite and thermite, and this is documented very well for us. So we know how the concrete can be pulverized. But what we have to ask ourselves then, if that's true, and 90,000 tons of concrete is pulverized and distributed laterally across lower Manhattan in a blanket 3 inches thick from river to river in a 3 square mile area, then how can it crush the building? This is another third of the weight of this building, not available to crush the building. What's crushing the building? Nothing is crushing the building. That was a lie produced by Zdeněk Bazant of Chicago Northwestern University in Chicago. And that lie was given to us 2 days after 9/11. And it became and remains the key theoretical basis for NIST's column failure theory. Not only did they use all that weight to crush the building, they doubled it by a factor of 2. Because it took the engineers 10 years to decode that paper. And that's what they found when they did. And they reduced the column strength below by a factor of 3. It's completely rigged in favor of a collapse. And that's what engineers like Tony Zambodi, Richard Johns, and Gregory Zudolinski, they tried to publish their paper in the American Society of Civil Engineers Journal of Engineering Mechanics, the paper that Zdeněk Bazant was published in. But they said, we won't publish it. Why? It's out of scope. Wait a minute. How is it out of scope to publish a challenge to a previously published paper in that journal? That's what we do in peer-reviewed science. Well, they didn't want any part of it. So there are ethics violations and lawsuits in play about that. Well, how would they have gotten such materials like thermite, nanothermite, and high-energy explosives into the building? Well, one way is under the guise of a fireproofing upgrade, which they had in the months and years just before 9/11. Coincidentally, some of those floors are the floors that got hit by the planes. Very interesting. Well, could they have had an undercover operation saying that they were applying liquid-applied fireproofing because nanothermite was liquid-applied because of the dual layers, red and gray? That indicates that they were applied in 2 layers with liquid. So there is liquid-applied fireproofing called intumescent paint. So that's a possibility. Need more research. Kevin Ryan of digwithin.net provided this initial research to us. It's got to be dug into a lot deeper. And there's another possibility. Maybe both are true. If we had access to the core columns and beams in the building, to the elevators in the building, we then have access to the core columns and beams in the building, which are immediately adjacent to them. They would have to saw through lots of gypsum board, like 2 inches of gypsum board, to get to those columns. That would produce a lot of dust. If you've ever done gypsum board work, you'd know what Scott Forbes was complaining about. He was a senior database administrator for Fiduciary Trust. And here's his testimony. Interesting. Well, this elevator modernization is actually documented in Elevator World, March of 2001. Ace Elevator got the contract with the Port Authority, had given one of the largest and most sophisticated elevator modernizations in the industry's history to a small maintenance contractor like Ace Elevator, with basically one customer, the World Trade Center complex. Fascinating. They came out of nowhere to get this contract from Otis Elevator, who had installed and had been maintaining those elevators for the life of this building. Where were the Ace Elevator contractors on the morning of 9/11? They were pulled out to a meeting because they were having a labor dispute, so we're told. They were pulled out. They weren't there to help the firefighters rescue the victims. These are experts in the elevator cabs, of course, which are used sometimes to rescue victims. Speaking of which, what happened to all the steel? We have the largest and most perplexing structural failures in history. But starting just 2 weeks after 9/11, 400 truckloads a day were carting the steel away. 400 a day. Shipped to China for recycling. This is before investigators could get their hands on it and do a proper forensic investigation. This is the illegal destruction of evidence in a crime scene, prompting Bill Manning, editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering magazine, to cry out, crucial evidence that could answer many questions is on the slow boat to China, showing an astounding ignorance of government officials to the value of a thorough scientific investigation. The destruction and removal of evidence must stop immediately, but it didn't. So in the World Trade Center towers, with the evidence of molten steel and iron, which we talked about already, thermite, incendiaries, we have 10 characteristic, very uncharacteristic features, most of them, with the outward explosiveness of this demolition compared to Building 7, a classic implosion. Direct evidence of destruction with explosives. Fire can't account for any one of these, let alone all of them. With additional circumstantial evidence, corroborative testimony, this becomes proof of controlled demolition, a body of proof that's convinced 3,600 architects and engineers, again, who appear in our Crime Scene to Courtroom film series, which you can see, the first 4 of a dozen episodes, which we're in the process of making now. And we brought this evidence to Washington, D.C. on September 10, 11, and 12. We had a sitting senator come and speak at a 9/11 Truth Conference, Senator Ron Johnson, who not only came and spoke, but offered his platform to us. And yes, we met with him, 10 of us that day, before he spoke to 150 of us that evening. And we're in negotiation with him about how to have this 9/11 investigation in the Senate. He is the chair of the Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. They have subpoena power. This is the most incredible development in the history of the 9/11 Truth Movement. And we're excited about pursuing that. But you already have one of the best documentaries made on the World Trade Center, 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out. And you have the 15-minute mini documentary narrated by actor Ed Asner, World Trade Center Building 7, Solving the Mystery. You have an hour-long film by Dylan Avery, maker of Loose Change 9/11, documenting the history of Professor Leroy Halsey at the University of Alaska about Building 7. You can download the brochure of which is an outline of this evidence that we've been talking about today. Print it, give it to every architect and engineer you can find, everybody else that you know, because we've got to get to the truth about 9/11, and we got to get it out there to everybody for a variety of reasons, including the fact that we are living in a surveillance state as a result of the Patriot Act, the Military Commissions Act, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012. Any of us can be arrested without a right to a lawyer, a trial, a jury. We can be tortured and even assassinated. All of our phone calls, our emails, our texts are systematically swept up and stored in the largest building in Utah for use against us later. No, the truth about 9/11 has to be exposed because it is the 2x4 that'll knock people over the head, and like it did me, and during which they will realize that we've been lied to on a colossal scale, and we can undo the $6.5 trillion global war on terror. Well, we can expose it and stop it. After all, where do you draw your line in the sand? Do you wait for the next 9/11? No, don't stick your head in the sand. Come out and speak the truth about 9/11. Join Jeremy and Jeff. We have a need. The world has need of us to speak this truth. So send this podcast to everybody you know. It's not too late. It's been 24 years. But by the 25th year, because of the recent advances in 9/11 truth movement, including the 5-part documentary series that Tucker has put out there, his new petition, newcommissionnow.org, that is historic in the 9/11 truth movement because he spent the first few years denying and ridiculing the 9/11 truth community. Now he's leading it. It's rather extraordinary, actually. Kurt Weldon, former Congressman, Dennis Kucinich, former Congressman, keynote speakers also at Turning the Tide in Washington, D.C. last month. So, yeah, join all of us. It's not too late. That's what we needed to share with everybody, guys.
Did he just leave?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I don't know if he meant to just back out like that, but wow, mind fucking blown.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Sorry about that.
There he is.
Hey, there he is.
I hit the wrong button. Isn't that terrible? And now I'm frozen. I'm going to unfreeze myself yet again. I don't know why that's happening. That's never happened before, actually.
It might be Riverside, man. We've had on and off. It's hit and miss with Riverside sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
No, seriously,
So,
Richard, applause, man. That was phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
That's pretty clear information, isn't it? I mean, you can't listen and watch this without going, okay, we need a new investigation. You got me on that one.
That was all perfectly articulated. That was wow.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, it answers a lot of questions, but it brings up so many more questions, which we don't have 72 hours to sit here and go through all the questions.
Yeah,
right?
seriously.
But I do have one question for you, Richard, and that's, do you ever worry about, you know, being so public with pushing, you know, all of this out and that kind of thing? Like, does that concern you at all?
Yeah. But the truth is that I've never had a threat in 20 years. So I'm not going to stop now. And even if I get one, this is the truth about 9/11 is a lot more important than anybody's life. but I'm delighted that I haven't been killed yet.
Well, me too.
Yeah.
protect this man, everybody.
Yeah, maybe I am protected. I mean, I do engage in a lot of prayer.
Well, good. Very, very good. I can only tell one story, really. I got into it.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
The one time when I was in the service with a power plant mechanic, and he was just kind of being really dumb about this whole thing. You know, we were talking about melting points, but even that, my argument was so little compared to what you brought to us today. I mean, his argument was that JP5, right? So back then we were working off of the idea of JP5. I mean, I ended up learning throughout my time in the Navy that JP5 and Jet A and Jet A1, which would have been the fuel sources on these 767s, is quite different. But even then, you know, he was arguing that the temperature burning of these fuels were at 3,300 to 4,000 or 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was trying to explain to him, you know, you got to understand that is the internal combustion section of your turboprop or turbo engines, right? The ones that Rolls-Royce made, the ones that we were specifically working on. And, you know, just for anybody listening, the argument there is null, because this is an internal environment, right? This is a system that does 4 stages: suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. You have your intake, your compression, your combustion, and your exhaust section. Without the first 3 sections of this, the power plant or the engine of an aircraft, you don't have the environment needed in order to get that high in temperature. So the burn temp of an external fire from Jet A, Jet A1, or even JP5 is roughly, I think you had it at like between 800, right? Was that about where you had it at? 600
is
600?
What the engineers and the brokers list as the burning point. And some say it's twice or 3 times that, but it doesn't matter. We're still half the temperature of the molten iron and steel that we have evidence of.
Yeah, JP5, just going off of the values there, right? The internal or the external burning temperatures of JP5 is 1,500 to 1,850. Now, like you said, that's not even close. You're definitely not getting molten steel out of that. Yeah. And you're definitely not going to get the beating that you see from thermite and thermate. It's just absolutely asinine. Sorry, that people would say, "Oh yeah, it's because the jet fuel." Come on, man, you don't be so close-minded here. You gotta really think about this stuff, and you don't even have to think that far.
So I'm curious. There's a chat question that came through, and I'm curious about this as well. So I know that you're an architect, and like you kind of have like your lane with this that you stick to, and I understand also why you would want to try to not stray too far off into like crazy world, because you know you have reputation and all these things that go along with that. But the question that came through is, have you ever commented on the predictive programming surrounding this event? So, you know, like all the weird stuff prior to 9/11 where you had cartoons with the buildings getting hit by planes or coming down. Like just so many examples of this. Is this something that you've ever looked into or commented on before?
Quite a bit, actually. And my presentation on the parallels between 9/11 and COVID goes into that quite a bit at the end of the presentation. We examine the X-Files and how Hollywood has given us the meme of a plane hitting the towers again and again and again and again, actually. And that is, you can find that. Just search COVID under at the website richardgage911.org.
Definitely going to do that. Definitely going to go and check out all the stuff on there. And my last question for you, I actually have another podcast, the Shadow Band podcast. I think I actually have an email from you or your rep or whoever it is. I would love to have you on that show as well. Just like you said,
sure.
The more we can spread this around would be great.
You bet.
So I'll definitely reach out to you on there, and hopefully we can set that up one day.
Thanks, Jeff.
Good. Yeah, between the two shows, there's a lot of reach there, and this stuff definitely deserves it. Richard, we'll when this episode comes out, it's going to come out. Let's see, the 20th, next Monday. We will push. There'll be quite the effort behind this.
Great
to get this out.
Yeah. Let's do.
I appreciate you, Richard. I mean, not only the work you're doing, but for coming on and spending the time with us. Lonely podcast nerds. We're grateful to have somebody like you to come in and do this. This is pretty awesome.
Yay! That means a lot coming from another conspiracy theorist.
Well, there's a lot to be said for sticking your neck out like this. This is a lot here, man. This is a lot, and you killed it. This is
well. We
amazing.
need to get this on Tucker. I mean, don't you think he's got this 5-part series? He didn't even call us, right? And yet this is the evidence he needs to back himself up.
Absolutely.
Episode number 4, which is coming out next week, of his 5-part documentary. He talks about the Halsey report, the University of Alaska, Professor Leroy Halsey. He talks about that. He talks about the nanothermite peer-reviewed paper by this team of 8 international scientists with red-gray chips of nanothermite found in all the World Trade Center dust samples. So why not, go the extra mile and show the physics and the detailed analysis like we've done today? Come on, Tucker. Come on, Joe Rogan. Let's get on the barrel.
All right, call to action, everybody. Send those emails, send those messages on social media, emails, whatever you got to do. Spread this episode around. Let's get Richard's voice out there, get his organization out there, get his videos out there. Amazing stuff. Richard Gage, 911.org. Check it out. Spread it. Do what you have to do. This word needs to spread. Richard, is there anything else that you'd like to put out before we call it a night?
No, that should do it, guys. Get the word out. I didn't come here just to speak to you guys at home. I came to speak to everybody you know. So how easy have we done it here with Jeff and Jeremy and me? This podcast has to go everywhere. What are you going to do when your child or grandchild looks up to you and says, Daddy, Mommy, what did you do to stop the police state that we're living in right now? Have a good answer for that question and let your emotion, your conscience guide you as to what to do, but do something.
Absolutely. Even if it's as small as have a conversation with somebody.
Yep.
That's it. Bring it up. All right. Richard, that was phenomenal, man. That was amazing, 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 amazing. I can't wait to get this out. Speechless. All right. Well, you left me without words, Richard. You really did. It's amazing, and I can't wait to check out the rest of your stuff. I'm gonna get it all. I'm gonna go check it out. Can't wait. All right, Jeff, you got anything to say before we go? You're muted. You're still muted.
You're muted again.
No. Okay. All right. All right.
One of these.
Well, Richard, if you don't mind hanging back for just a few minutes, just so I can make sure all your audio and video comes on over to me. Once we shut down the live stream, we'll have you out in less than 5 minutes. All right. All right. Beautiful. Until next time, everybody. This has been another episode of the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. I'm Jeremy. I'm your host. Richard Gage was our guest today. Make sure you go check him out, richardgage911.org. He has phenomenal content, as you just saw today. That is just the tip of the iceberg for everything that he has to present to you. Check him out, support his stuff, talk about what he has going on. Until next time, travelers, we'll see you in the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. If you're looking for more of our stuff, head on over to infiniterabbithole.com, where you can find links to all the podcast players that we are available on, and even our video platforms such as TikTok and YouTube. While you're there, make sure to check out all the links for our socials and hit that follow so you know when all the new stuff from our podcast comes out. And until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye.